Like, first of all, let me say this. I started playing this game because of your videos, like your videos, and you had taught me so much about the game. So thanks for that.
Thanks, man. That was the original intent of creating the channel and going on YouTube because I felt like it's a complex game and
It is.
surprisingly complex, and I found it hard for new players to get anywhere without getting frustrated.
Yeah, like first video I watched was I think Gneisenau or Bismarck. So when I started playing, my first line was German line. I
Mm.
straight went to that. It was great.
I, I think my first line was the Japanese battleship line because back I started pretty much a couple of months after the game came out, and we only
Wow.
had American, Japanese, and I think the Soviet cruisers, but that was it.
Like I started playing a couple of years ago and I have only seen few improvements in the game. Like how has the game evolved over the years for better or worse? And have you noticed any significant improvements over the years?
So, how has the game evolved? Well, I've been playing it for quite a long time, obviously. And the one thing that sort of stood out to me back at the time was that a lot of mobile games back then were pay to win, where you had sort of this free hook that got you going in the game, but then very quickly you hit a glass ceiling where you actually had to pay money in order to be successful. And
Yeah,
one of the things that, yeah,
now most of the games are like that, yeah.
even today, still a lot of mobile games are like this, yes. And one of the things that I keep repeating about Warships Blitz is that while there are paid elements, there's really no pay to win. So if somebody who doesn't know how to play the game buys themselves a tier 10 ship, then they're not going to get anywhere. So
That's so true.
this is yeah, this is one of the things that the game has sort of stayed true to. There's a lot you can criticize about gambling mechanics and other things, and there's a lot of money you can spend on the game, but you don't have to. I'd say a lot of my favorite ships are actually tech tree ships, and as that is one thing that's really been uh, true to. And obviously, over the years, like I said earlier, we started out with very few ships, and now we have a huge amount. I mean, even just the tech tree ships are massive, and we have an unfathomable amount of premium ships to the point that when a new ship actually arrives in my press account, oftentimes I don't know where it went because there are so many ships in there. The other thing I'd probably like to mention in terms of evolution, the game starts looking a little aged just visually, but I still think it looks good enough, and it doesn't distract from the sort of from the gameplay. The one thing that's really come in that I would say that was an improvement that I really enjoyed that came to mind was the sound update
Yeah,
that happened. I think we got the first one. Bella from Wargaming did that one and coordinated that, and just the better gun sounds. This was one of those pet peeves I had that a
oh.
120 millimeter gun sounds exactly the same as a 457 mil.
Like when they first released the gun sounds, I was like, wow, this is good.
Mm.
It's really good.
They did another update recently that sort of felt a bit like a step backwards, but still better sound. That's definitely something, and just a steady stream of new ships, and not just new ships, but also new game mechanics, new features. Just generally things that were added, scout planes, radars, uh, fuels, all various kinds of smoke screens, burst fire mechanic, all these kind of things that has been added.
Where,
Um,
like, in
yeah.
your opinion, where do you think the game needs more improvement?
So we've had. I have a lot, a big list probably, don't we all? Um, we've had some bug issues, and probably one of the more significant ones in recent times that has actually been fixed was the turret bug. Um, I don't know if you've run into that one, but this was the problem that on some ships the turrets would swing to the wrong side, even
Yes.
if you were pointing the camera. The hardest it hit, I think, was the Paolo Emilio because you had to kind of look away in order to make a rush work.
Oh
Otherwise,
yeah.
your torpedoes be on the wrong side. And that was actually something that got fixed. And that was a significant improvement, but obviously we have a longer wish list. Probably, I'd say at the top of my wish list is bots.
Oh
And
my God, yes. Like I always hesitate to fire at a bot because I know that bot's gonna turn.
I think, yeah, but there's a couple of issues. One of those, yes, is definitely the imbalance that they bring. So if you're playing a destroyer and there are bots in the enemy team, uh, they used to, and I'm not sure they still do, but they used to negate your smoke screens,
Oh yeah.
and obviously they can instantly just turn and evade torpedoes. So bots bring imbalance, but there are other problems I have with bots, and one of them is that on quiet times on servers,
Mm-hmm.
you will find large amounts of bots in the game. And it just probably my biggest issue with it is that it just looks unprofessional. Because if you have a ship that just does like this crazy dance around an island, and if you imagine you're a new player, right? You're a new player, you start the game, you play tier 2 or tier 3, and you're mostly going to be playing against with maybe two
Yes.
players on your team and 5 bots. And you see all these bots dancing around you, and it's like, what kind of game is this? So it just, I think it turns players probably away early on, or gives them the completely wrong incentive because to or idea about what the game is about, seeing bots like that. So I think this is something that really needs to be fixed. That's on top of my wish list. Followed in a probably close second by the gambling mechanics.
Oh
So sonar
yes.
sweeps are infamous for that. The crates with the various psychological mechanics around them, the events where you have this sort of sunk cost fallacy exploitation where you're investing a large amount of time only to find out that the only way you can actually get the thing you've been working towards is to spend money. I think that stuff is a relic of the earlier days of mobile gaming, in my opinion. And mobile gaming has always been a bit more exploitative than the rest, but I think this is just not necessary. And that is sort of the thing that I feel we could learn a lot from Warships Legends, which is also a wargaming
Oh,
title
I
and
love that
actually an
game.
in-house development. Yeah, and it does sell ships, and
Yes.
but much more outright I feel than Blitz does in certain places.
Yes, like for example, like community has been complaining about, of course, they all complain about CVs, but especially about FDR. There's so many complaints about FDR, and in recent times, every time there's like event or something, Wargaming kept releasing the same ship, like FDR in the crate, with better odds. I mean, 1% is better odd for FDR. Like
So,
just maybe don't release it.
yes, there have been we've had mistakes with I would say with ships that were unbalanced, and probably the most famous one is the Atlantico,
Oh my
where
God.
which has been nerfed, but that's not an easy progress. So nerfing a ship post release when it is a paid item is actually significantly difficult from a legal perspective because you paid money for a thing. And imagine you buy a book on Amazon, and then the Amazon decides that they want to remove the last chapter or
Oh
something
God.
after you've purchased it, right? This is a very very tricky situation. It's not something they can do easily. Other ships stand out, like Smolensk, for example, and I. I don't personally have such a massive problem with carriers. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, FDRs are nasty. I absolutely agree. And American carriers in general can be, with dive bombers and permafires, can be really nasty. But I think the biggest problem in my personal experience is that people don't adjust. So if you're playing in a battle and you see an FDR on the enemy team, and you're in a großer Kurfürst and you sail around alone without support, and then you get blasted into oblivion,
Yes.
you can counter carriers. I've had many fun encounters with carriers. I'm a cruiser player. I love AA cruisers, and I love actually plane hunting and these sort of mechanics and overlapping AA zones. If you play destroyers and there's a carrier out there, don't go rushing off alone. The carrier will look for you, especially in
Exactly.
tier 10. Right? These sort of things. I've had fun games where I was able to communicate with a friendly carrier to get when I was playing something long range. Let's say I was playing a Yamato, and you can spot on the map where the enemy carrier is launching, and I was able to get the friendly carrier to scout the enemy carrier, and we sniped it out of the map 3 minutes in.
That's the
You
best
know, that
part.
sort of thing. It's there are fun interactions, and I personally really don't mind carrier. I'd miss carriers if they were not there, but I get your point in that yes, there are extremely powerful ships, and you will run into situations where you run into somebody who spent money to get, who is a very good player, but also spent money to get all the best stuff and has all the overpowered ships. And you run into like, I don't know, triple Atlantico or triple DZP or triple Smolensk division. These are the games you just chalk off, right? You just
Yes.
say, oh yeah, well, it happened. It's only 7 minutes. You go in the next round and things go better.
Also, I remember you mentioning about like bugs and smoke, bots seeing through smoke. Personally, I have been facing infinite smoke bug for almost 10 weeks. So every time I'm in a
Yes.
battle, enemy team and my team, if there's 10 smokes in the battle, they won't go away. 10 smokes always there for entire battle for me. So I can't see my team, I can't see enemy team ships. It's been like that for me for 10 weeks.
Yeah,
So
I've seen this a while back. This the smoke bug isn't new. From what I've actually, thank you for the reminder. I'll have to report that to Wargaming again. That's still a thing when I capture it next time. Effectively, what happens is that there's some error with the smoke timeout, and the smoke timeout is like 5 minutes or something, and then effectively the smoke screens just stay forever.
uh,
From what I've heard, it may be client side, so uh, no idea what that is. I'm not sure if they have it on the radar, but I'll definitely raise that again. It is very annoying when these sort of
yes,
things
like
happen.
every time I walk into a smoke, it's like 5,000 seconds, 3,000 seconds. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's definitely a bug. And maybe this is one of those things that we can push for now that hopefully the login problem has
Yeah,
been sort of sorted, or at least from what I've heard from early feedback, is that it seems to be a lot better after 7.4. And they've also said in the patch notes that they're still looking at it. Look, I come from a software development background, and well, I haven't seen the World of Warships Blitz code base, obviously, but I can sort of imagine what a code base of that age is looking like. And you're going to have some gnarly code in there. You're going to have some surprising interactions between things, especially if you
yes,
make modifications. You're probably at a code base that is by now, what, 6, 7 years old. You're probably through 2 generations or 3 generations of developers. So the original people most likely aren't working on it anymore. Again, I don't know any of these things. I'm just going off my own experience with
yeah,
software development projects. So a lot of the people working on it don't actually know what some of the bits of the code are doing. And this is why it always makes it really hard to kind of track these things down and fix them. But what I like is that there is an increasing awareness that this is important. It's
yes,
taken a bit of time, but there's an increasing awareness that it's important. And we keep saying, look, maybe look at the roadmap and take 1 month and just dedicate that to just bug fixes and
yes,
not releasing new contents. And I think that there is a shift towards realizing that yes, this is an important thing, and we need to get there. It's just not easy. A lot of times, this is not trivial to do. And also, if you imagine you have to test this on, I don't know, 100 different kinds of phones and on 2 different operating system platforms and various versions of operating systems. So uh, nothing is easy. In the end, for me, the biggest part is communication. Go
yes,
public with it, give updates on progress. Um, this has improved. We're seeing more and more on the community Discord happening. And I think Facebook, which I personally don't really use, but I think there's stuff going on. So there's more information being given out. There's more acknowledgement, and we'll get there
yeah.
eventually.
Like
It's frustrating, but yeah.
I was going to ask you related to that, like, do they actually listen to community feedback? Because there's updates which are really good for a game, but with every update, we keep getting introduced to new bugs and issues. Do they even test them? Like, updates should resolve the issues, not introduce to new issues. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
updates get tested. I'm not part of the actual test progress, but this
Yeah,
kind of goes back to. But I know that there is a multi-layered test process for things. It sort of goes back to what I said earlier, that
Yeah.
you make a modification because you're introducing something new, and something else breaks that you haven't really really expected, or that you haven't really, it's like you flip a switch and the light turns on two houses down the street, and it's like, why did that happen? Nobody ever thought that would happen. So yes, there are usually bugs after releases, because it's also not just the client that gets released, it's the other side as well.
Yeah.
So you have a server side that gets released, and uh, I'd say usually the first day after updates can be a bit bumpy. After that, usually gets a bit smoother. Um, so yes, I think in general, uh, there is actually definitely work going into testing things, also from a balance perspective and from a stability perspective. And a lot of but like a lot of things also might happen under certain load conditions. Again, I'm completely fishing out of the blue here because I don't know, but I'm assuming, again, for background, that so things might only happen if you have 30 people on the server at the same time. Things might only happen in certain game scenarios if a certain ship launches at another certain ship at a certain angle. So the amount of scenarios that you have for stuff to go wrong is very, very vast. And it's not something that you can easily run, say, through an automated test suite and saying, okay, we've covered every possible angle and scenario. And we know that everything still works. So to a degree, a couple of things always get through and then
Yes.
get hot fixed.
I have one
But
more
I
question.
understand it's sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you go first.
No, I just wanted to say I understand how frustrating that is for players, because at the end of the day, especially if you've paid money, right? So let's say somebody is invested in a timed event, and they've invested money to buy gold to open crates to get through that event, and then the game doesn't launch for them. Or somebody is trying to complete a mission because they bought the Blitz pass and they really want to get the ship, and there's only a day or two left, and then the server is unstable. Uh, with all understanding for bugs, we also have to say that wargaming makes a product here,
Yes.
and as such, the customer really needs to come first. And you'd have to say, if there are things that impact customers, these need to be top priority, and these need effectively you'd need to drop everything. So when I used to work in software engineering, when stuff happened that had large customer impact and the severity was judged accordingly, you drop everything. You create a war room, you get 20, 30 people from different teams into that room, depending on the size of your organization, and you'd effectively stay there overnight if necessary to figure out how to get in German we say how to get the cow off the ice, how to get the customer back on track, and how to get things to work. So I think that's sort of a mentality that it's a service that needs to be provided, and if something doesn't work or if people can't play, then that is a massive impact, even if it's just for a day or two.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I used to play ranked battle a lot, and then I stopped like few months ago because every time I try to play ranked battles, it's all premiums. So what do you think about like premium ships in events like Division Battle, Respawn, Skirmish, or ranked mainly?
So I personally don't mind too much.
Yeah.
Because, like I said earlier, premium ships in most cases aren't necessarily that much more powerful than tech tree ships. Probably the single best battleship in the game currently is in tier 10 is the Saint Vincent. There are uh, there are very, very good destroyers out there that are non-premium. Just the sheer amount and pain that you get from Darings and Shimakazes and things like that. So
Gdansk.
just by the fact that it's a yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying Gdansk, the new ship.
Oh yeah, Gdansk. Yes,
Yeah.
everybody loves the Gdansk. It's sort of nudged the daring of the throne now. Um, it's I'm not put off by premiums in general. Probably the bigger issue I think is that it becomes difficult to remember what premiums are capable of, even for me. And I mean, I I don't play huge amounts of time. I usually play, I'd say probably average maybe 2 games a day or something. But I do the ship reviews as much as I can, obviously, and for these I test play the ships. But even for me, it becomes difficult at times. Is okay, this is an obscure premium ship. I have no idea what that does, and not knowing what an enemy ship's capable of. Does that thing have smoke? Does it have radar? Does it have AP only? Does it have torpedoes? These sort of things. You can infer kind of. It's like if it's Japanese, it probably has torpedoes, but a lot of for me that's even so. I would say the bigger problem than there's people bringing premiums along. So um, I'd say ranked. Uh, I don't play ranked much, but that's due to my personal account being on the US server, and the ranked time windows just don't work for me very well.
Yeah.
But when it was tier 9, because I just don't have many tier 9s laying around, because usually you don't keep tier 9s, because tier 9s are kind of always the bad stepping stone
That's
between
so
8 and
true.
10. Uh, you'd naturally bring in the premiums, because there are a lot of tier 9 premiums. And even for that, even ranked actually brings in maybe an opportunity where you'd say, okay, I have a black Izumo. Where else would I be playing that if not in ranked? Because who wants to play the Izumo?
Oh my God, that's so true. Like Izuma, imagine taking it and playing against like 70 10 ships. Oh no, that's a nightmare. Uh,
Exactly. I mean, Black Izumo is actually not completely terrible, but still, I mean, you probably wouldn't voluntarily go into a tier 10 match with that
no.
thing.
No, that's spot on. I have a topic that's it's like it's on my mind for last couple of days. Like, what are your thoughts on these recent updates and the introduction of super ships in the game? Like, how do they affect the game balance?
So it's very interesting. We'll have to see. There's obviously a lot of interesting stuff in 7.4, and just quickly pointing out the commander system, which desperately needed some work. So the first step there with the new talents, that sounds interesting and seems to be quite aligned with what Legends is doing as well. Super ships, we have to see what the event's going to look like. I've read the patch notes a couple of times, but it's obviously not 100% clear how this is going to work out. But it feels right now more like a late game resource sink for players that, well, have just too much of everything. That sort of timed fuel system that you have to get, like you have to unlock tokens of some sort to be actually able to play these things. Can obviously there's a risk that it can devolve into the sort of, oh, you can only play 10 times and then you have to pay to play
Oh
sort of thing.
yes.
But so hopefully that doesn't happen. In terms of balance, I actually I'm not entirely certain if I'm allowed to talk about them because I had a brief look, but I'm not sure if they're under NDA. Can you see the super ships in port,
I
or is
play
that just the press
so
account?
when I downloaded the update, I straight away bought both the super ships and I spent 52 million silver.
Wow.
And
Oh, I think
I played one
right.
battle in Annapolis and oh my God, such a good ship.
So in that case, I'm probably fine to talk about it. So tier 10 has always been a bit special because usually you have a two-tier spread, matchmaking spread, but in tier 10 you're always top tier. Uh, I see these as tier 11 ships. I know some people don't like hearing that, but for me these are literally just tier 11s. They're bump up from tier 10, but in order to, it seems that it's a very limited resource because it's only during event times and you actually have to pay for things. I had a quick look at the two of them in port because I couldn't actually test them, but I have them in the press account. So Satsuma is a Shikishima with an extra turret. That thing looks pretty dangerous just due to the extreme range that it can bring up. With I think it's got a Scout Plane 3 on it, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken.
Yep, and in the range with the
And
scout plane you get 20 kilometers range.
yeah, um, but then at the same time, at 20 kilometers range, what are you going to hit? What I said earlier, aircraft carriers, right? Um, because whatever you're aiming at 20 kilometers has to be basically stationary. Because if anything just moves a little bit, there's no way you're hitting anything.
Yeah.
So, but if you can play with a friendly, if let's imagine you have a carrier, and you have a Satsuma in the game, and the carrier spots the enemy carrier, and you have the range to effectively land eight 18-inch shells into that thing. we'll have to see how good the dispersion is, all these kind of things, to see if this extreme range even works. We've had problem in the past with extreme range ships, and I don't think we've ever had a range that long, but we've had problems with render distance that you especially see it with the scout planes in the early times, that targets would be sort of not moving smoothly because
Yeah.
they're too far away from a game mechanics perspective. So we'll have to see it. So Satsuma is an artillery platform. Artillery platforms don't win games. Cap control wins games. So
Like
um, uh,
my friend he played Satsuma when it was released. He said the ship hits bloody hard, but at the same time, Satsuma can't take hits back.
it sounds a lot like Slava in that regard.
Yeah.
And yes, these ships are valuable. One of my favorite ships is the Yamato in the game. And it's this ship is so old. It's been there since the very beginning, and it hasn't really been changed since. But it's still a really powerful early long range and then late game aggression ship. So it's a powerful ship. Is it going to win you every single game? I doubt it, because artillery ships like that usually don't. Annapolis for me is much more interesting, because Buffalo already is a monstrosity, but Annapolis is basically a radar sonar Buffalo with burst fire. So with the for those of us who haven't seen it yet, so with the Spanish cruiser modification, where you can get a couple shots off, and with extremely hard hitting shells from what I've seen, but with a relatively short base range.
Yes, the
So
burst
it'll
fire is really good. It's so much better than the Spanish. Like I got burst fire, I got like 20 or 24K on Yamato
Yeah,
just with
I can
burst fire.
imagine.
Yeah,
But then you end up having a almost 30-second reload on that, and you
25,
have
yes.
and you have to get that in under 12-kilometer base range, I think. So very powerful ships. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're not powerful, and they're definitely more powerful than the tier 10s, I'd say. But I think it's not going to throw the balance off. I think the only thing it's going to throw off is where people might be miffed about is that they feel like I have the tier 10 and I'm the biggest dog in the park, the biggest shark in the pond, and that's no longer the case, because you're now facing tier 11 ships at times.
Yes.
But we'll see what the impact is. They are not going to be regular game ships, so you won't encounter them in randoms outside of the restrictions, and there seem to be some pretty severe restrictions in terms of how many super ships you can have per battle. You're not going to get bots in super ship battles, so that's going to be another completely interesting factor, right? Because uh, you're going to end up potentially in one-on-ones or 2v2s with these things, and
Yes.
then the actual class of ship makes a huge difference. Because if you're playing an artillery ship like a Satsuma in a 7v7, that's one item, right? But if you're playing in a 3v3 and the other two are destroyers, now good luck.
Absolutely. Like as I said, the first battle I played Annapolis was Annapolis versus Annapolis, and remaining every ship was a bot.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought that they said in the patch notes that there are no bots in
Now
super
the
ship
first
battles.
battle I got was a bot battle.
That sounds like something that needs to be fixed. So that, I
Yep.
think, if I remember that correctly, that was definitely something that was in
That's
there.
yeah. Like my favorite part of the update was definitely the commander XP because like I straight away leveled up my Yamamoto. It helped me a lot. And also, what are your views on the increased commander grind, like increased number of levels with increasing XP requirements to achieve said levels?
So I would say the additional things are great. And again, if we're looking over the pond onto Legends, the way, if I remember, Legends does that is that you require additional resources. So you effectively, yes, you need XP, but you also need. It's much easier to come by in Legends because it's spread between commanders, and you need commendations, if I remember correctly, and then you have like legendary items and such things. I like that approach. Like you don't need to instead of having to grind for months to get to the next level, you have like a specific item that you need in order to get the commander. I much prefer that. I think currently the grind levels are too high. I think they're just set linear. I think level 13 is 450,000 or something, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, and that's just stupid. So uh, I don't know if that was intentional. Maybe that'll get adjusted. I hope it's not a push trying to get people to use gold to level up. I think it costs about 24,000 gold to do the three talents, So hopefully that'll get reduced, or in my opinion, even better if it was replaced with some kind of collectible item that you'd find like they do it in Legends.
Yeah, like I leveled up my MMO from level 1 to level 12 because I had 6 million Commander XP sitting there. So it only took me like 1.6 million to level up from 1 to 12, but I think it asked me more to level up from 12 to 15.
It would be. I think it's always by half more. So you'd have 450,000 for the 13, and then probably somewhere around 600, 700 for 14. That's insane. These are
Yes.
insane numbers. I mean, you can grind. If you grind a line straight up and you carry your commander over without spending gold to on the retraining every time, you're gonna, I think, end up with a level 9 or level 10. I think level 9 commander at the end when you reach tier 10. So there's actually a fair amount of grind in tier 10. You probably have to play like 100 battles plus in tier 10 just to get your commander to the all important APCS guild if you're on a big gun ship. So I haven't done the math how long it's going to take, but I think these numbers will have to be reduced because they
Hopefully,
sound absolutely outrageous.
hopefully they'll take it into consideration and change the numbers because yeah, it's a long grind for sure.
Well, from the patch notes, one of the ideas seemed to have been that once they reach level 12, commanders generate free commander XP, which is then transferable. So the idea seems to be that similar to Legends, you just gain neutral commander XP that's not bound to a specific commander, and then you can use that to unlock the talents rather than grinding it out. I think that was sort of from the patch notes, that was the intent. I've tried this earlier with my von Hipper because he is level 12 on my personal, but it doesn't seem to be increasing the commander free XP amount. I'm not sure if I've done it wrong, but I've asked Wargaming about it. So next week when they come back online, they'll probably hopefully give me an answer on that one.
Yeah,
But that seemed to be more the intent here, that you collect this commander free XP from all your level 12 commanders, and then you use that to level up the talents rather than having to grind through it because that's just too much.
it is. Like, there's a question I often ask myself, and I want to know what you think. Like, how do you feel about the overall direction Wargaming is taking with this new content at the moment?
Um, I'm actually quite happy with things, to be honest. So if I pick up my phone and ask myself, do I want to play a round of World of Warships Blitz? I'm just like, yeah, absolutely, I do. So I'm asking myself again, what is keeping me in the game? Right? What is after having? I mean, I haven't unlocked everything in the game by far, but on my personal. But I've got a bunch of tier 10s. I've got a couple of commanders at level 12. So what's entertaining me? What's my goal here still? And for me, it's just fun and to just to play around and to get into something engaging, to have an engaging duel with another player, to see some good plays that I wasn't aware of yet, to come up to see people coming up with new ideas on how to do things. The general game direction, I mean, is somewhat limited if you don't want to do fundamental overhauls. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, are we going to see a carrier rework like in PC, where you have first-person perspective to drop planes? Are we going to get submarines? And I think I'm very much doubted, just from the massive amount of change that would cause on the game engine itself. Like the changes we're seeing and the new the directions that we're going with is collabs. Not my target group necessarily, but I've heard people are really happy about it. People love Transformers and love to see Transformers content in the game, and there has to be something for everyone. Hey, uh, and there's a good balance between introducing new tech tree lines and new premium ships. So for all the free-to-play players out there, you're not limited to the existing stuff, but you're getting the new mechanics, right? You're getting new tech tree lines every now and then, and it's not overwhelming, but there's sort of a good grind. The only danger I see down the road is that at some point you'll have too many ships that you can't remember anymore what they're doing, like I mentioned earlier. But generally, in terms of evolution, it seems to be events and collabs to keep people interested, new premiums to get people to buy stuff if they want it, and new tech tree lines to get people to grind stuff. But there's no like groundbreaking directional change in the game. And I don't also necessarily see that, but this is also not something I necessarily want. So just as a very quick example, sorry, I tend to talk a lot.
No, it's sorry, it's great.
I'm used to that because when I record videos, I'm the only one talking. Um, just a very quick example before it slips my mind. I tried War Thunder Mobile when it came out, especially the naval part, to see if that would be uh, an interesting new aspect towards because War Thunder is very different from World of Warships, and I found that the introduction of submarines was just done so badly that it completely killed the game mode for me, because you could already tell, you knew that the team with the most submarines would win, and you so what I'm saying is that if we're looking at non-linear changes on new territory, on groundbreaking stuff like submarines or new carrier modes or stuff like that, I think there's a huge risk in there that it actually makes the game a lot worse for people who are used to what they're playing right now. For me personally, the game is in a good spot. It occupies that spot very well. It is the sort of more arcadey spot, but still very challenging multiplayer, quick multiplayer spot. And for those who want to have the sort of longer battles, more punishing kind of approach, Legends or then PC. If you don't want to go PC because of all the mayhem, Legends seems to be a pretty good middle ground, and it's available on mobile. But Blitz itself still has its own spot, in my opinion, just for this quick game, interesting mechanic. Um, and if we were to do any kind of massive directional change, that'll risk sort of breaking that and taking it away. So I'm not actually looking for something to be drastically different.
Yeah, exactly.
Just polish, better graphics, maybe better sounds, streamline these long-standing issues, get the bots into a better place. Especially that some tiers or some servers tend to be not too well populated. It's not the most massive player base. So, I think that's a good direction to
And
go.
no submarines in Blitz, please.
I think you could
Oh God.
put submarines into Blitz, but you would have to actually figure, I mean, technically, but it's like I said, you'd actually have to figure out a way to make this work. And we've seen it on PC where they've tried, and it's potentially a much bigger, I don't know if it's a bigger team inside Wargaming, but I would assume so. And it's not gone well. So I think these sort of massive changes, they're extremely risky for a game. So I don't
Absolutely.
think we'll see that. I don't have any fear there.
Like these days, there's a lot of noise in the community, like whether Wargaming is actually paying attention to the community feedback or not. And what do you think Wargaming should do to gain the players' trust? Also, is there any suggestions you would offer to Wargaming to enhance players' satisfaction and retention?
So I think wargaming, and okay, let me set out with, because I'm in a bit of a weird position, because I'm a community contributor, which means
Yes.
I talk to both the community and to wargaming. Um, and from I think wargaming has a bad rep from PC because there have been sort of fallouts with the community, with the whole, well, we're just going data driven. We're not gonna care what people are gonna say, and you also have to be careful. You can't let your player base drive you. You have to listen to them, but you can't let them necessarily drive you in front of you, because you'll always have some people that are the most vocal, and you have to end up making a game for everybody. So I think wargaming in general has that reputation in the community of not listening to people. Uh, in terms of Blitz, Blitz is not PC. I think it's a completely different team as well, and I would say the community managers especially have done an absolutely stellar job interacting with the CCs and involving us, and taking on the feedback, and we're trying to amplify these kind of things. But they also, you might have seen it, they've had a questionnaire sent out recently, and asking for feedback. And obviously, it's easy to say, "Oh, I want this thing fixed," but Wargaming isn't fixing it, so that means Wargaming doesn't listen to me. Uh, at the end of the day, they have their internal roadmaps, and they decide how they do things, right? But I think there's definitely an understanding of impact on community, or from the community managers from Wargaming, and I think what they need to get better at still, what there's already been progress, is the transparency about these things. Just communicate, right? Because
Yes.
all of these impressions come out from lack of communication. If your customer doesn't know what's going wrong, and you're just saying, "Oh yeah, there might be an issue," and you acknowledge it a week later, and then you maybe send out a bit of free gold to everybody. It's not the same as to say, "All right, have a public place that says right now have a server status page, right? Industry standard things, right? Have a current incidents or known problems page that you have public, not an announcement room on some Discord server, because not everyone is on Discord, but just have a website up that says this is the current state, these are the known problems we are aware of. These are the things we're working on. You give your regular updates to people from that. This is something that everyone can link everywhere, something that everyone can point everyone to. Everyone can refer to these sort of things. I think there's still headroom to kind of make these improvements. The other thing in terms of gaining trust is especially around events. I think they haven't got events and the balancing of events down. And this is something we know from PC. I still remember I used to start watching jingles and flambas mostly on YouTube on Warships PC, even though I wasn't playing myself, but
Yeah.
I did learn a lot from them. And I still remember Flambas's insane rants about one of the Christmas events where it was basically impossible to unlock the thing. But it was very clear that it was the sunk cost fallacy exploitation approach, where you would say you make an event that even if you play 12 hours a day, you can't beat that. But after you've invested so much, you're probably going to have to pay money to get the rest of the way. I don't know if that's the intent, but like unwinnable events are not fun for anyone. And I think this sort of stuff just destroys more goodwill in the community than it brings. And it shouldn't be hard to just math that out, right? You could make a spreadsheet. You could say, off the napkin calculation, make yourself a spreadsheet, figure out how many games does somebody have to play in order to get to one of the prizes, and pick your average player, and you have the player statistics. You know how often people log in, right? Get your average player and align the event such that your average player can get something out of it, and that it is possible for the top players to get somewhere and get the good stuff. And if you want something purchasey, then just make progress purchasable, but don't make it impossible, right? So purchase of progress should always be for those of us who don't have time. If I'm a student and I'm broke, and I can play I play World of Warships 10 hours a day, then and I can unlock a thing, that's fine. But let's say I'm employed and I'm having 2 kids and a family, and I only have time for 2 or 3 rounds every night before I go to sleep. I should be able to also get the reward from an event, but then I can spend money to do that. I
Yes.
think that would be a good balance that covers both cases, keeps the community happy, and at the same time also is a revenue stream for wargaming.
Like, yeah, like I'm glad you brought that topic, like how many battles you have to play to get the certain reward. Like I remember playing, I had to win 450 battles to get a tier 8 ship in the reward tree in 6 days.
Yeah,
And I played it. I
that's
won I won like 400 plus battles to get that ship.
that is if you say an average player has a win rate of 50%, then you're talking 900 games.
Yep,
Right? A game with waiting time, let's say a game with waiting time and switching between ships takes 10 minutes.
that's
Then we're at
insane.
9,000 minutes.
Oh my God.
uh, you break that down by 6 days, and you very quickly realize that this is almost unachievable, or is an amount of investment that very few people can actually make.
That's true. All right, Terry, we're into a final question. I just have to ask, if you had to give three keys as suggestions or pointers to new players, what would they be?
So, like I said in the very beginning, the reason I actually started my channel way back in 2018, not that long, not that long ago, in 2018, was to give new players a bit of a bit of a boost, because if you're a new player and you get through tier 1 to 3 within a couple of hours, easy, and
Yes.
then you're starting to hit tier 4, 5 maybe, and tier 4 and 5 can actually be surprisingly difficult at times, because you find, especially if there are missions to grind, and now that Blitz Pass progress is bound to missions, I find a lot of people who actually know what they're doing playing lower tiers in order to grind missions out, for example. And so for new players, the first thing probably would be to say, be aware that this game has a relatively high skill floor. So you have to, once you reach tier maybe 5, 6, play there until you're comfortable, until you feel that you have a good grip on these tiers before you make any further investments into higher tiers. And then hop to 7, 8. Tier 8 is a comfort zone for many players. So there are a lot of very, very dangerous premiums at tier 8. So once you get into the tier 8 matchmaking bracket, so tier 7 to 9, things get significantly more difficult than they are in 5, 6. And then try to, once you're comfortable in 8, then try to get up to 10, just to avoid frustrations. Don't buy into high tiers. Just play on the sort of mid tiers for starters, until you feel like you found out what kind of ship you want, what kind of play style works for you, these sort of things. As a second item, ships have roles. So in the game, we have 4 ship types: destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and carriers. But there are way, way more subtle actual ship roles that aren't spelled out. So you can have a destroyer which is a stealth torpedo boat. You can have a destroyer which is a gunboat. You can have a destroyer which is a destroyer hunter. You can have a destroyer which is capable in AA. You have a destroyer which is more of a team player. You can have a destroyer leader, which is almost a scout cruiser, which then flows into the light cruiser sort of tree, which light cruiser, heavy cruiser is no distinction the game makes either. And then you have light cruiser, scout cruisers, light cruisers, which have slightly different roles. You've got heavy cruisers, you've got super heavy cruisers, and then you get into the battle cruiser territory, and then you get actual battleships, and then you get into aircraft carriers. So there are many more roles, and then there are actual ship types in the game. So it's deceptively more difficult. So figure out what your ship is good at, right? If you're what is your main purpose in a round, right? If you're in a destroyer, the priorities: scouting, if there's no carrier, capture control, and play for your team, right? It's a team game and it's a team win. So if you understand what your ship's good for and what it isn't, and try to play to its strength, then that's something I think that gets you a long way towards being successful. And probably lastly, know your ship. 50% of your success is going to be to know what your ship can do and what the enemy ship is doing. Please insert Sun Tzu quote at this point. Even if you go just with the basics, right? Your ship has torpedoes. What is the range of these torpedoes? Do you have a smoke screen? What ships in your tier, in your matchmaking bracket, have counter smoke screens? Who has sonar? Who has radar? These sort of things. What do you have to run away from? You're in a destroyer. Your natural enemy are light cruisers and anything Italian because of the relatively weird semi-armor piercing mechanics. So these sort of things are very, very essential to know what your ship can do and what the ships that you encounter can do. And even if you just go by the basics and say, if it's Japanese, it probably has long-range torpedoes. If it's Pan-Asian and I'm in a destroyer, it can't torpedo me. If it's German, it's got really dangerous armor piercing. If it's American, it's got lots of guns. If it's Japanese, it probably hits pretty hard from range. If it's Soviet, you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
sort of get an idea what you can do and what you're up against, and that's going to be 50% of your success rate. How often have I seen players, even in high tiers, just doing things like destroyers, broadsiding Christopher Columbus? It's a silly move, and you learn the hard way. But if you want to be successful and you figure it out early on, then it'll get you there a long, long, long way.
Yeah, that's so true. Uh, You know what, Terry? Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Like, as a community, we respect everything you do, and it's been such a joy to have you as my first guest in this series.
Thank you very much for preparing and for hosting the whole thing. And
Of course,
good luck. I'll make sure to tell me when the video is out, and I'll make sure to promote it on the channel as well.
no problem. Of course, I will upload it most probably tonight.
No worries.
And I wish you all good luck with your future projects, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
What am I going to do next? Yeah, we'll find out. I definitely have to bring some Legends content back.
I know what I started playing
But
Legends, and it's pretty fun.
it is. It's not going to be the mainstay on the channel, but it is a pretty fun game. It's sufficiently different from Blitz that I really
Yes.
want to feature it more. Right now, I'm just super busy with house and construction and everything. So my first order of business is to try and catch up and get back to normal frequency.
Hopefully soon. Hopefully everything will be soon.
All right.
All right. Thanks, brother. Bye.
Thanks, mate. Have a good day. Bye.